I can't think of anything that we've done for ourselves that has had as immediate and as dramatic impact. So let me just share 3 stats with you. First of all, if you take Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year, our inbound meetings have increased by 89%. And actually Q1 is up 260%. The other thing was that we have a 3.6x increase in direct and referral traffic. And then the other thing is that our session time, so the level of engagement, is 35% longer when it comes in from either direct or from AI. Hello and welcome to the Healthtech Marketing Show. I'm your host, Adam Chirinas. I'm the CEO of Health Launchpad. We're one of the presenting sponsors of this show. And for those of you who don't know us, Health Launchpad is the pipeline growth company for B2B healthcare. As always, a huge thank you to you for listening. And if you haven't already done so, please hit the follow or subscribe button on whatever app you are using. It makes a real difference to us. And, you're joining a community that's building. We're adding subscribers all the time. And that's a large part. And a big thank you to our wonderful sponsors, the people at Healthcare Now Radio. Healthcare Now Radio is a 24/7 healthcare only online radio network. And they also have just an amazing podcast syndication service that's done wonders for this show. So big shout out to Roberta and Carol for everything you do. We really appreciate you. Now, today's episode is a little different because we're going to get a little forensic on some things that we've been doing for ourselves that's made an impact on our business. And it's something that is relevant to so many people in marketing right now. And that's the impact that AI is happening on buyer behavior and particularly to the way that search works. So some good news is that we've seen, but good news for us anyway, is that over the last several months, we've been seeing a significant increase in inbound meetings at Health Launchpad. And when we sort of start to dig in the reasons behind it, something keeps standing out. And that's that a meaningful number of the people that who book meetings with us through our website tell us unprompted that they found us through ChatGPT or Claude, not through Google, and not through any outbound campaign that we're doing, but they found us themselves through an AI engine. And we're so delighted to see this because, like many companies, last year was a bit terrifying. We saw a big decline in SEO-driven traffic. But in the last 6 months, that traffic has actually grown again. And more importantly, the pipeline that we get from our website has significantly grown. And when we look at the data, the other thing that we're seeing is in addition to more meetings, we're actually seeing that there's higher quality. And that's because there's higher intent coming through the website. That what we're seeing is the people who are booking meetings with us, it kind of feels like they know us when we have the first conversations with us, and they're much more likely to convert. So the business is converting much, much faster. Now, I'm happy to also say that this isn't an accident. We've been really intentional about this. So in the last 6 to 9 months, we've been on a mission to turn around the decline in traffic and to figure out how to get more business from the AI engines. And that's specifically what we're going to go into today. So my colleague, the amazing Mark Erwich, who is our Chief Strategy Officer, has led that work. And today, we're going to talk through exactly what we did, why it worked, and what you can do to see similar results. And we're going to cover the market shift that's going on with some new data that really stresses why this is such an urgent issue. If this is high on your list of things to do this year, you're right to have it there. And if it's not high on your list to have it on there, you probably should. We're going to go into the framework we use, and we're going to get quite specific about what we did from a technical perspective and from a content perspective and the changes we made. And at the end of this, you're going to get a very concrete action plan that you could actually start to work on this week. And if you're already doing this sort of stuff, I think you're going to see, you're going to get some new ideas. Nobody has figured this out. Nobody's figured this out. We certainly don't think we've figured it out entirely, but maybe you'll pick up a few tips from this. So bear with us as we go into detail. So Mark, welcome back to the show. Now, you've been living and breathing this, and set the stage for us. What's actually happening out there with search and buyer behavior?
Yeah, thank you. And really excited to be here. So I think when setting the stage, there's two things that we want to think about that are happening. Two major shifts. One is the shift to AI for search, and two is the shift in search behavior. So let's take them one by one. The first one, the shift to AI for search, is we knew that the first vendor on the shortlist will win the deal. And we knew that B2B buyers fill their shortlist on day one of the buyer's journey. And in 95% of the cases, their purchase from day one vendors will be one of those on the list.
Let me just jump in there. So this is like, actually, I think this is like some quite well-known data that came in from Sixth Sense, that every time they look at it, it just gets worse. So it's like, if you're not on the so-called day one list, you're in real trouble.
Yes. Now, what has changed is that AI is now deciding on who makes the list. And knowing that 94% of the B2B buyers are using AI tools in their purchasing process, they ask ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, or any of the other tools who the leading solutions are in the space that you're in.
Wait. Just wait a second. 94% of B2B buyers are actively using AI in their search now.
Specifically in the purchasing process, right? So that's even making it more precise. And so asking them who the leading solutions are, they get one synthesized answer, not 10 links to explore. No, one answer from these tools. And even more interesting, AI chatbots are now the number one source influencing B2B shortlist. The research coming out 2 days ago. It's just amazing how the world has changed.
Where did that come in from?
Yeah, G2 had that research coming out 2 days ago.
AI is the number one source of influence?
Building the buyer shortlist, yes. Ahead of like review sites, analyst firms, your own websites, like everything else. It's just amazing how the world has changed. And so if you're not in that AI answer, you're not in the deal. There is no page 2, right? Remember what I said, you have this blue links, maybe 10 are listed out there, and people would go through and compare. But now it's completely changed in the world of AI, where you have like one answer. And if you're in there, you're excited. If you're not in there, you don't exist. So that was the first shift. And then let's talk about that second shift in search behavior. If the buyer is not using one of those AI chatbots, but Google search instead, the search is now influenced by AI overview. You've all seen that. It's not happening with every question that you're asking Google search, but the majority, and particularly B2B research, it's happening. So the buyers read that response and no longer click on one of the links. This is what we call zero click. So this is this concept where, hey, an individual does a search, gets the response, and does not click to get in towards the next step. And so zero click is very fast accelerating. Without AI overviews, a third of the searches result in no click. With AI overviews, that jumps towards 43%. And in a full AI, Google AI mode, this hits 93%. And these people are getting their answers and not visiting anybody's website.
So just to pause there a second. So what we're saying is that 95% of B2B buyers are using AI in the purchasing process.
Yeah.
And if they use AI, 90% of the cases when they use AI, they don't click through to a website.
Yes. And so the 93% in AI mode is not clicking anywhere. And people start to worry, but I think that is actually the wrong thing to panic about. The real story is the role of your website has now changed, fundamentally changed. For 20 years, we built websites for humans. And this concept is the thinking that your prospects, people are interested in your solution, would visit your website, they would read, they would get convinced, they fill out a form, and now you have a lead. Like, I've managed marketing teams in the last 20 years, and that was the concept, right? And now that mental model of driving people towards your website, getting them convinced, converting them there, if you are operating under that assumption, there's a big flaw, because your website now serves two audiences. That is, yes, there's still human traffic, but more important, or at least equally important, the AI crawlers. The AI crawlers are the gatekeepers, basically. They read your site, they interpret what you do, and they decide whether you're credible and whether to cite you or not. And if you're not cited, you're not in the conversation, and the buyer wouldn't never even know that you exist. So the wrong question to ask is how to get that clickback. And coming back towards your earlier point, Adam, it's like, hey, we see a drop in traffic. It is not so much, well, we need to do more on SEO. No, the change to make this is this mental shift is your site written so that AI can understand, trust it, and cite it? And so when buyers are visiting your website later in the journey, the site must still reinforce what the AI has already told them. But if AI never named you, none of that matters, because you will never get a visit. So the takeaway here is build your website for both. Write for a human who shows up ready to buy, but structure for a machine that decides whether the human will ever show up at all. Now, what's interesting, and that's a really fascinating piece of data, I think, is that the AI visitors convert at 5 times the rate of Google traffic. So ranking on Google used to be the goal. Now it's the floor, and citation is what wins.
I just want to pause there a second, because that's a big thing that you just said. So what was the 5 times again?
So that is really interesting. The question is why, right? There's like 5 times. Well, that sounds amazing, and it's really good. But really, the reason behind this is that the Google visitor is still in the shopping phase, right? They're still comparing, they're still browsing, whereas the AI visitor is pre-qualified, pre-sold, like got his advice from the AI engine, whether that is Claude, Perplexity, or any other tool. Like, it's not just, hey, that link is better, but it's an educated link. Here is the reason why you need to go there versus one of your competitors. So it's really critical. So that buyer is no longer asking the question, should I consider them? But they are asking, are these the right guys? So you get fewer visitors, but far more pipeline. So here's the interesting thing that's happening now. The shortlist is built in a conversation that you are not part of. By the time that your team sees any signal, the decision of who is in the running has already been made, right? So you didn't lose the deal. You were never even part of it. There's no form fill, no anonymous site visit, no intent spike. And the most important moment in the buyer's journey is now invisible to you. So really, in that fundamental shift, you need to rethink how you approach it. It's not so much about recapturing demand, but it's more about making sure that you're being named, being listed, being cited before the demand ever even surfaces. And if the AI engines don't know you, don't understand you, or don't trust you enough to cite you, well, obviously your leads will dry up, your pipeline will dry up, and sales will blame it on everything else except for the real cost.
It's interesting, though. So thinking about this, that companies who have shifted away from a volume-based metric, so number of leads, to more of a quality-based metrics, they might have even got rid of the whole notion of MQLs, are in a much better position to make the change, right? Because you're not back to your earlier point about what it used to be like when you were in the marketing leadership seat at various companies, is you're no longer counting the number of clicks you get to the website, or necessarily even the number of form fills that you get. What you're focused on is what happens later, which is getting higher quality opportunities, which is a bit nerve-wracking, right? Because you're waiting a lot longer for the opportunities to show up, and you're counting that you've done the right things to get people to show up. And so, blowing our own trumpet right now, our own trumpet, is that the things that we've been doing over the last year seem to have helped in making sure that we're getting on the day one list. Probably not all of them, but certainly it seemed to be more than we were before. And the net result is that we're actually getting more traffic, but maybe more importantly, we're getting better quality of traffic, and it's resulting in more pipeline, more opportunities.
So if you think about this change in buying behavior, the change of the role of your website, I really like the way that you're describing that, Adam, because the connection is now not just, well, we need to measure it in a different way and there is a longer sales cycle, but actually all of this has an impact towards what is the role of your website, what are you going to disclose, and that is definitely not just a marketing discussion, it's a C-suite discussion, because what's changing is the content that you put on your website related towards your solution. You can no longer think about, hey, this is the marketing content, and when they got in towards a sales discussion, this is the other type of content. If you leave out that technical depth and don't have that on your website, and your competitors do, suddenly those LLMs will say, well, these guys are very high level and don't get that level of trust. And your competitors will be cited when buyers are looking for a solution. So really critical that you have that discussion. And I love the way that you're describing it's like, it's a much bigger impact. Absolutely true.
All right. So let's move on to what people can do about it, but particularly this notion of citation.
Right. So we thought about what is the best way to frame this, right? And we see that in 3 different areas, 3 different dimensions. And we started with that concept early on, which is authority, relevance, readability. All of these 3 need to be addressed, and missing one does not get you cited. So let's dive in it towards all 3 of those. Authority really talks about whether the AI trusts you. And these are the third-party signals that outweigh anything else that is in there. So that's really making sure that you're being recognized. Talking about analyst mentions, industry recognition, class is really important in our industry, G2, awards, anything external. Then also thinking about client references, making sure that you have your case studies on there. And not just like a bunch of logos, but actually what is the outcome? What is the impact? Ideally from a financial perspective, but even if you can't talk about finances, some of the clients in healthcare industry have challenges with that. Still speak numbers. That's really critical, not just vague claims. Third-party directory listings is important and making sure that you're listed there. Earn media coverage, being cited in towards the trade press. Any article there, whether it's an interview with your CEO or a customer mentioning you in an interview, all of that is important. And then making sure that you have brand consistency across the different platforms, not just on your website, but also on your LinkedIn pages, the different profiles that you have in the class, in G2, Crunchbase, wherever.
So Mark, one thing I want to just flag here, because you made this point in a discussion in the Healthtech Marketing Network sessions the other day, is that earned media isn't always in your control. What can companies do that, say, haven't been covered very much?
Yeah, so I think one is there is always the opportunity to get you covered by paying for that. I think our landscape in media has changed somewhat. But then also companies can make sure that they're like doing smaller things in making sure that they're mentioned there. So I think there's a combination that they are. And then if they get in towards media and they are covered, it's not just being there, but also make sure that you have on your website a listing of press coverage. So you point back towards that.
Yep.
And so I think it's a mix of those things and making sure that you're not just mentioned, but you're also making sure that you actually invest on that on your website.
I think it's interesting that, in terms of authority, which is the first pillar you mentioned, that PR is now even more important than it was in the days when it was you were thinking about the impact that PR has on SEO. When it comes to AI optimization, PR can have a potentially even greater impact.
Right. Yeah, because it gives a level of credibility which the AI engines are checking for, right?
Let's move on to the second pillar, relevance.
So this is really about, do you have the right answers towards a query? And I think it's important here to take a step back. When you do a Google search, you enter one term, right? You type in EHR and you instantly get replies back. But people change their behavior as they start understanding the value of those LLMs. So they're much more specific. Hey, I'm looking for a clinical documentation solution in small to medium practices for the 50 physicians. What are the best solutions out there? That has now become the question because the buyers realize that by putting that data in there, they get a much richer answer back. And so the relevance topic is really about, does your website provide the right answer towards that? And so do those AI crawlers pick up on that concept that you are the right vendor? And obviously, there's many different questions being asked, right? It's not just one single question. So making sure that you have those answers on your website already pre-populated will help enrich those LLMs with your information, and the chances of being cited are significantly higher.
There's a shift here from keywords to questions. And I want to make sure that listeners really absorb that point because it really changes how you think about your entire content strategy. Can you put a finer point on this notion?
Oh, 100%. So the way it's shifting, and I gave one example that the buyers are much more specific. That's one element. But then the other element is the level of technicality. So now buyers start asking, hey, does this solution live in the cloud? Or I have part of my infrastructure on-prem, part of it in cloud. Can your solution deal with that? So they're already pre-qualifying what usually would happen in a sales situation. Again, if you don't have that information on your website, you're not even considered. I did an interesting project for one of our clients where I basically asked both ChatGPT and Claude create a matrix with the most important elements that we should consider buying a particular category of products. And Adam, the result was just fascinating. I get a full matrix, a full Excel with 8 different columns in there, and the 4 different vendors were evaluated on that. It was just unbelievable. And so the richness of information coming out of that is all based on public information, and particularly is coming from your website. Again, if that information is not in your website, if your corporate decision was, well, that's typically for the SEs to talk about, we don't put that on the website, you're out. You're not even considered because now the buyer doesn't see that information and don't think that you're the right fit.
Absolutely fascinating. Okay, so we've talked about authority, we've talked about relevance. What's the third one?
The third one is readability. And this talks about, can the AI actually read you? So this is a technical dimension, and this is really where a lot of companies have a silent problem and they don't even know about that. Like we had that with one of our clients. They were complaining about a lack of traffic, and we understood that part of the traffic was blocked. So we see a few things that we typically say, hey, take a look towards that. Take a look towards in your robots.txt file on the website. Are you blocking AI crawlers? And one could ask, well, why would you do that? Well, if your website was built, was it 7 years ago or so, and your IT department was involved, they may have said, well, we're going to block everything but human traffic. And they may have had good reasons for that. But we live in a different world. In today's world, traffic from those AI crawlers is critical. You want to make sure that you get that. And you also want to make sure that you point them in towards the right direction. We have this LLMS text file as well that's more educating those crawlers about what is the audience that you serve, what is the solution, what's the impact that you have. Other things that we're looking at is like the way that you have images on your website. But even there is some things that are very SEO similar, like the site speed and those type of things. Like if you have errors on it, you have similar problems as SEO.
I think it's particularly interesting that because when we're going to get into it a little bit later on, but when we did the work on our own site, we were having problems from an SEO standpoint that weren't just related to the what the impact of AI. It's just there was stuff that needed to be cleaned up from a technical perspective. And so you actually, if you do the work, you really do the work from a technical SEO perspective, sort of technical perspective, you benefit from both the upside from an SEO standpoint and from an AI standpoint.
There was a blog post, I think there was on Claude specifically, that I read on that. And I think our readers or our listeners may find this interesting as well. These crawlers have a budget allocated. So a budget per basically website on the amount of time that they can spend there. So once you understand that, then it starts to make more, or at least for me, it starts to make more sense, because that budget is because computer power is limited, they need to decide how much time am I going to spend on a website. So the easier you make it for these crawlers, the more information they will find you. If there is a lot of energy that they need to put in, they're going to waste a lot of energy on that, and the less content they will actually get.
By the way, you mentioned earlier on about the crawlers being blocked. What was the cloud? There was an issue with Cloudflare, I think, came up, I think, last year.
Fascinating. So in a default setting of Cloudflare, it was one, and now I can't remember which crawler, but one of the crawlers was actually blocked, simply completely blocked on your website. So the only way that then an LM can learn about your product, your solution, is like third-party information, like media coverage and potentially other listings out there. But other than that, there is no way that could even learn about your solution. So it's really important that you take a look on the technical side as well. It's not just a content game here.
Okay. Anything more you want to say about readability, or should we just move on to what we did? Let's get into the specifics.
Yeah, no, I think we should know what we did. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me talk about the technical side first, and then you can talk about the content side. So we did look towards a number of the things that I mentioned. The robots text file, making sure that GPT, Claude, Perplexity, all are allowed and that they have access towards it. We didn't have an LLMS text file, and you can read up on that. There is an interesting perspective. Different engines deal with it in a different way, but it's a simple text file basically that points the AI systems towards your most important content. We started to add schema markup on key pages. And this is really important because it helps to understand what is the information there and have it categorized in a way that the AI engines can quickly build tables and better understand the information is on there. So it will basically communicate, because it may sound a little bit abstract, but this will basically communicate, hey, this content is structured, authoritative, and citable. Doing checks on server side, like how the pages are rendering, is the content rendering in a specific way so that the crawlers can understand this. And sometimes this is specifically related towards the content. But a few things to think about here to make it a little bit more practical, so it's not all so abstract. But for instance, if you have images, are these images, is there text with the images so that the crawlers can understand what you're trying to depict? There's no point having a page with 40 logos of your clients if you don't have underneath actually tagging that these are your clients. In a similar way, there's beautiful ways where you have sliders and other fancy tricks that you can do on your website. That's all fine, but make sure that your crawlers can read that. So I think those were from a technical perspective, the most important things.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's always a debate when you talk to sort of people who've been doing SEO for a couple of decades, right? So as long as there's been SEO, many of them are actually saying, well, it's, I get everybody's concerned about AIO, but from in terms of what you do, there's not that much difference between SEO and AIO. And I think from a technical perspective, there's some there's some merit to that argument. But I think the lesson that we learned is that it's just important to, the sort of AI engines are even less forgiving than Google's crawlers in terms of how you show up. And so what we found is that the impact from a technical standpoint of really optimizing the site, of degunking, removing stuff that slowed down page rendering, that kind of stuff has made a dramatic increase in terms of the traffic that we're getting both from SEO and from AIO. One of the things that I've always felt with SEO is that you kind of expect it's about 90 days until you're going to see an impact. You might see some sort of early signals within 60 days, but it's usually like if you do an SEO optimization, an overhaul, it usually takes about 90 days. What did you expect and what did we see in terms of impact?
I think that those are two different questions. First, what did I expect? And then what was the impact? So let's first take what I expected. So I really had hard times setting expectations here because, hey, I've been in healthcare IT for the last 30 years or so, and I've seen a lot of like next new big things. So like I didn't have the right answer immediately, and I didn't know, well, is this actually worth all the energy that we put in here? And if I do, what will be the impact? And so I came towards, I think, fairly early towards this conclusion. Well, if we focus on a framework and build on that, and that is this authority, relevance, readability framework that we have, that will really help us to make a bet that the time that we invest is going to be worth it. So I didn't know what to expect in terms of timeline. Is this going to be 30 days, 90 days, 6 months? I've done website rebuilds where it took more than 8 months before we got traffic back. So I know that it sometimes is really hard. And so looking towards this methodology, starting to make changes, and we were really like, yes, this is the path that we go on. Sometimes I was really surprised. There were things we changed, and 2 weeks later we were cited. It's like, yeah, this is cool. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
And super rewarding as well. Like, it's nothing better than to see immediate results.
I've been amazed by that. I want to spend a few minutes just to talk about the other side of it, which is the content side of it. And so, I mean, for years, we've written content for the sort of traditional SEO driven inbound engine, and it's been really successful for us. I mean, we're seeing 9% month on month growth steadily for 4 years. And then that started to tail off towards the end of 2024 and really started to decline last year. And what we decided to do was to essentially bifurcate our content strategy. So historically, what we'd done is we'd written content entirely for humans. So now what we do is we have 2 types of content, and it's really quite intentional. We have thought leadership content, which is exclusively for humans. I mean, sure, we will do things to make sure it's optimized from a search and AEO, GEO, AIO standpoint. But we want to make sure that any human reading it is going to find this engaging and interesting. And the podcast is kind of at the heart of that. And our Healthtech Marketing Ideas newsletter is one of the main vehicles for our thought leadership. Now, but the other part of it is strategy to create content that is written primarily for the answer engines. Now, it's still written in a way that humans would read it and find it interesting and useful and practical, but it's a bit more like reading a textbook than an interesting article. And not surprisingly, right, a lot of the content is how-tos, a lot of it is FAQs, and it's written so that, ChatGPT will find it. Like, for example, one of the best account-based marketing agencies for health tech. That's the kind of thing that we're writing it for. We're writing it for as an answer to a specific set of questions. And 3 things have shaped how we've approached that content work. The first is question mapping. So we went through a lot of the questions about that we think that health tech marketing buyers realistically ask. So we've done our own buyer journey on our own market. Things like agency selection, ABM, use of AI in marketing, content strategy. And we made sure that those questions were literally answered on our website, either as FAQs or as really long how-to posts. Now, what we're doing is we're leveraging 5 years of accumulated content and essentially repurposing it. And I'll be full disclosure, we're actively using Claude to do that and then editing the output afterwards. And, that's helping us write these essential pillar posts, 2,000, 3,000 word long posts on those topics. The second was leaning into proprietary content. So we've got a lot of data. So because of the Health Tech Marketing Network, we've usually do about 5 or 6 surveys a year. And we use that research and the observations that come out of the discussions that we have in the Health Tech Marketing Network to create original content on this. And the third was getting really disciplined about recency. So AI systems deprioritize stale content. So pages that haven't been updated in 90 days can lose citation share to fresher sources. So we've built a simple content calendar around keeping our key pages current, not just publishing new pages and walking away from them and sort of forgetting about them for 9 months. And the results have honestly blown us away. I can't think of anything that we've done for ourselves that has had as immediate and as dramatic impact. So let me just share 3 stats with you. First of all, if you take Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year, our inbound meetings have increased by 89%. And actually Q1 is up 260% quarter on quarter. But if I take those, I want to be more conservative about it, just taking 6 months worth of data, that was already up 89% on the previous year equivalent period a year ago. The other thing was that we have a 3.6x increase in direct and referral traffic. And so I think anybody who's played around with this knows it's really actually difficult to figure out where the traffic, which traffic is specifically coming from AI. But the general consensus is that, the referral traffic is definitely the source of AI traffic, but a lot of direct traffic is being attributed by GA4 to AI. So it's 3.6x increase. And then the other thing is that our session time, so the level of engagement, is 35% longer when it comes in from either direct or from AI, from what we believe are our AI sources. And then the last point that I mentioned earlier on is that quite often, maybe half the time when we talk to a new prospect, they will actually say, "Oh yeah, I found you through ChatGPT." So the result of this is we're actually seeing more visits, not fewer visits. More importantly, better quality and more pipeline. And we're able to do this in, frankly, this is 6 to 9 months worth of work, and we were seeing an impact, honestly, within 30 days of doing it, and that's just grown from that. So the honest version of this is we were really surprised at the impact that it's made. We expected it to take longer. We expected it to be harder. And we're not sharing this because, hey, we're all smug about the fact we figured it out. We really haven't. We've shared it because we think that most health tech companies are struggling with this issue. And we hope that by sharing this, warts and all, that you'll get some benefit out of it. So anyway, Mark, somebody listening to this, what can they actually do about this starting today? What does an action plan look like?
Well, there's some very simple things that anybody can do and actually should do to get a better understanding. First of all, take a device at home, open a browser and open an incognito window in there and use ChatGPT, Perplexity, Microsoft Copilot, all of these tools, and start asking the question, what are the leading solution for ... whatever the category is that you're in. And really make sure that you're not logged in towards your account. If you have a ChatGPT or Perplexity account, make sure that you're not logged in. Make sure that you're using an incognito browser. Because there's this concept that the AI engines are always trying to please you. So they're using whatever is in their history and will give you the answer that you think or they think you'll be most happy with, and you want to avoid that. So once you get that answer, you get a better understanding of who's listed first. And if that's you, great. If that's one of your competitors, start asking why. And so that gives you a first check-in. You can do the same thing as I mentioned, like go a level deeper and ask for a comparison chart or something like that. Check if your website has a robots.txt file. That's the second thing. Very easy to do. Anybody can do that. It's just opening your browser, go towards your website, after your website /robots.txt. And in there, look for, is traffic from any of the bots blocked, or is traffic towards certain pages blocked? And is that setting according to what you want it to do? The third thing is check whether you have an LMS file. This is relatively new, started about a year ago. Websites popping that up and towards their website to provide more information. Now, what's interesting is what is documented versus what in general, we believe, or people who are working in this space believe is working. So it documented is very little. If you go towards either Google, ChatGPT, and look towards their documentation, there is either little or nothing written about it. So it comes really out of the public domain. These are the best practices in order to do that and set on here. But here you need to create, or this is where you put information about what is the audience that you're serving, what is the solution that you have, how is it addressing the different problems. And then what I would also do, and that is the fourth one, is like go towards your 5 top pages, easy to find if you have Google Analytics 4 running on your website. What are your most traffic pages? And are these pages answering the questions that your buyers typically have? And Adam, you mentioned something great. It's like, hey, yeah, we know what questions there are. You may not know that. Go towards your BDR team or ask your sales reps, what are the first 3 questions that your prospects are? And that typically is very helpful in making sure that those questions are answered, because those will be very similar towards the questions that people will ask an LMS to find and to evaluate you as a vendor.
So those action points. So run the AI query test, check your robots.txt, check for an LLMS.txt file, and audit your top 5 pages. Now, there's a lot of information I realized in this episode. So what we've actually done is we've turned this into an actionable blog post that will help you actually start moving ahead with this, including what Mark has just covered. So there is a link in the show notes to this how-to post down below. So, for the DIYer, what Mark just said is, I think, really helpful. So you've got to be pretty motivated to work through those in an afternoon. And the ones that Mark described are really the diagnostics, and they tell you where you stand and sort of point you in the right direction. The structured work is different. And this is where the compounding happens. This is where you're going to start to see real results. So let me kind of go through those. First of all, it's question mapping at scale. So not just a few pages, but systematically working through every question your buyer asks across every stage of their research and the buyer journey, and making sure your site has the answer. And that's a real content project. It may be the way that you approach content every year, but this is a different way to think about it. The second thing is entity consistency across every directory, every third-party presence that you have any influence on, whether that's G2, LinkedIn, Crunchbase, Class, Trade Press, other analyst mentions, and making sure that the brand signals are coherent everywhere AI might look. And then perhaps most importantly is rethinking and building the right measurement framework for AI visibility as a distinct discipline. And this isn't necessarily going to be your existing search dashboard. You've got to figure out a way to track citation share, AI referral conversion rate, your brand presence in generative responses. These are different KPIs and need to be tracked separately. Otherwise, you're not going to know what's working. And there are a whole bunch of new tools out there. We can't really stand behind any of them. We've been trying many of them. They all seem to be good at certain use cases, but not all of them. And so you're just going to kind of have to figure out which ones work for you. So this brings me to something we've been doing for our clients for the last few months. And we went through, as I said, this is the process we went through on our own site. And we've made the mistakes, we've kind of learned from our own struggles, and we found where the quick wins are going to happen and what it takes to get a sustained effort. And we've built a formal version of this, and we call this the AI Audit. And here's what it covers. We do a technical readiness check for crawlability, robots.txt, schema, LLMS.txt. We do a content citability assessment. So are your key pages answering the right questions at the right depth with enough proprietary signal to earn a citation? We review your entity footprint across all the third-party directories and platforms that matter. And we do a competitive citation analysis. So who in your category is already getting cited by AI and why? And we deliver a prioritized action plan. So 30 days, 60 and 90-day recommendations. And this is only $2,500. So, it's a really thorough output, and it's going to give you the roadmap to get moving with this. And if you're interested in this, there's a link down below to book a meeting with Mark to go through this, and he'll explain the process. The clients that we've done this with have really enjoyed the benefit of it and are taking action on it already. So I want to come back to where we started as we bring this thing to a close. So a few months ago, we were starting to see a decline in organic traffic, and we were asking the same question a lot of you are probably asking, and what we are hearing from clients and other people in our network. So what is happening to search, and what can we do to turn this around and get our inbound pipeline working again? And, the other thing that, you're seeing, right, is the channel has changed. Your buyers are using AI to build their shortlist, and they're doing it before your sales team even knows they exist. And that problem is getting worse, particularly with AI. And if you're not showing up in those answers, you're not in the consideration set. It's not that you're ranking lower, you're just simply not in the deal. The good news is that it's fixable, and we believe that if you make the changes now, you can gain a competitive advantage. So the technical foundation isn't that complicated. It's just work. The content shift is a real effort, but it's one that compounds over time, and you've just got to have a plan for it. And as I said, I think there's an early mover advantage here. So I think with that, I want to give a big thank you to Mark for walking us through the technical side of this and for figuring all this stuff out. I'm just blown away with the enthusiasm that you attacked this problem 6 months ago, the tools that you've built to help us do this, and for helping us experiment on our own site, because that, took some confidence in the approach, and it's really paid off. So if you found this episode to be useful, please share it with a colleague in the health tech marketing space, one of you, maybe somebody on your team, maybe somebody at another company, anyone you think is wrestling with this issue. And again, please do subscribe. And if you think this episode was any good, give us a rating. You can do it. Every app has a different way of doing it, but you giving us a 5-star rating makes a huge difference to getting this podcast found by other people in the community. So with that, I will bid you all farewell. And until the next time, I'm Adam Chirinas, and this is the Health Tech Marketing Show.